He stood at the edge of history, a man who'd seen the world burn and now wondered, what if it never had? What if one decision, one invasion that changed the fate of millions had never happened? The year was 1941, or at least it was supposed to be. In this world, the tanks never rolled east. The skies over Moscow never turned black with smoke, and the endless Russian winter never swallowed a generation of soldiers whole. In this world, Hitler hesitated. His generals begged for patience. The German armies, instead of storming into the vast Soviet plains, turned their gaze south, toward the oil fields, the seas, the Mediterranean. The war changed shape, and so did the world. But in a quiet village deep in the heart of Europe, an old soldier named Otto Becker sat on his porch listening to the wind move through empty streets. His hands, scarred from battles that never came, trembled around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. He had prepared for a war that never happened, trained for a fight that never arrived. His uniform, folded neatly in a box, felt more like a dream than a memory. Otto's father had fought in the Great War. His brothers had fallen in Poland. And yet, when the world expected him to march into the Soviet lands, he stayed behind. Orders were canceled. The invasion was postponed, then abandoned. And suddenly, silence became the loudest sound of his life. Factories hummed. Propaganda still filled the air. But something in Germany changed. Without the Eastern Front, without that endless frozen graveyard, the war dragged on differently. Slower, quieter, but no less cruel. Nations still burned, but not the same ones. Britain, cut off yet defiant, endured. America, watching from across the ocean, waited. And in the East, the Soviet Union prepared, not to fight, but to survive. Otto often wondered if history had been spared or merely delayed. He saw young men grow restless with no battle to prove themselves in. He saw leaders grow paranoid, searching for enemies they could not see. And he saw his country sink deeper into a war it could never truly win, not with guns, but with pride. At night, he'd walk through the quiet streets, past the posters of victory that meant nothing. He'd look up at the stars and think of the millions who, in another life, would have died in the snow. Perhaps, he thought, the world doesn't need more soldiers. It needs fewer graves. But peace did not come. The empire still fell, only slower, rotting from within. When the Allies finally landed in Europe, they found a Germany exhausted not by battle, but by its own silence. The people, starved for truth, turned their anger inward. And Otto watched as the nation he'd sworn to serve collapsed under the weight of what it didn't do. He survived. But survival didn't feel like victory. It felt like waiting for a storm that never came. Years later, when peace finally arrived, Otto stood in the ruins of a city that had never faced Stalingrad, never faced the Eastern winter, yet still lay in ashes. He realized then, even without that invasion, humanity had found a way to destroy itself. He whispered to no one, "War doesn't need a reason, just a spark." And then, with a tired smile, he added softly, "But peace, peace must be built by choice." His words spread, remembered by the few who still listened. Teachers quoted him. Soldiers carried his phrase like a prayer. Peace must be built by choice. Otto Becker died quietly at dawn, the sun spilling over the fields that once trained soldiers who never went east. No statues were built for him, no medals pinned to his name, but his silence spoke louder than any victory parade ever could. In a world without the invasion of the Soviet Union, millions lived, yet the shadow of what could have been never left. The lesson was clear, written not in history books, but in human hearts. Even the wars we don't fight still leave scars.